Welcome back to the First Gnostic Church of Christ. We are beginning the read and commentary of the next text from Codex VI, the Nag Hammadi Library, Prayer of Thanksgiving. It is a Hermetic Gnostic prayer text preserved in Coptic, Greek, and Latin. The Coptic version is found in Nag Hammadi Codex VI, where it is text number 7 at pages 63 through 65. And you can also find the Greek version in the Papyrus Mamot. Now, the prayer is addressed to God in thanks for his gift of revelation. It says that God is called Father because he gives us mind, speech, and knowledge out of fatherly love. It has a typically Gnostic view of salvation. Quote, "We rejoice, having been illumined by thy knowledge. We rejoice because thou hast shown us thyself. We rejoice because while we were in the body, thou hast made us divine through thy knowledge." And you can see again, knowledge, gnosis, wisdom are key components of Gnosticism. The difference between the Greek Gnostic or the Hermetic Gnostic and the Christian Gnostic is at the cornerstone or the core of the philosophy of the Hermetics is Hermes or Thoth, whereas in Christian Gnosticism, the core of our philosophy, Christ and Sophia. In the Nag Hammadi context, the prayer follows the discourse on the 8th and 9th that we just read and shares its bipartite, as opposed to tripartite, anthropology, and man being essentially made up of body and soul. Whereas in Christian Gnosticism, we share an understanding of the tripartite human being, made up of three parts, being body, soul, and spirit. The scribe who copied it may have considered the discourse to be the knowledge the prayer was thankful for. A short scribbled note in the first person comes immediately after the prayer and indicates that it was selected for copying from a larger library of texts. In the Latin Asclepius, the prayer follows Hermes Trismegistus's admonition to his disciple Asclepius that, quote, "God finds mortal gratitude to be the best incense." The prayer is evidence for the existence of ritual kissing and communal meals among the liturgical practices of the Hermetic community in Rome, Egypt. And these are common practices that you saw between Christ and the disciples as well. We pointed out two primary features from this text, which is the importance of knowledge being the cornerstone of salvation, and then secondly, the father-mother in the pleroma finds most pleasing from humans, or the mortal human, is gratitude. And so that is really the essence of the main messages that we want to get from this text. It's very short. I'm going to read and comment as we go along as usual, but in particular, I want to highlight what exactly is it that we're to know as a Christian Gnostic. What is it we're celebrating? And we got some of that from the last book, the Discourse on the 8th and 9th, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more as we read this text. And then secondly, why gratitude is so essential a feature to pleasing the Mother Father. This particular translation is by James Brascheller, Peter A. Dirksey, and Douglas M. Parrott. It's written here, "This the prayer that they spoke." Now, we don't know exactly who wrote this, and we don't know exactly what knowledge has been revealed that they are thankful for. It could be essentially just knowledge in and of itself that is being celebrated. Quote, "We give thanks to you. Every soul and heart is lifted up to you. Undisturbed name. Honored with the name God, and praised with the name Father. For to everyone and everything comes the fatherly kindness and affection and love, and any teaching there may be that is sweet and plain, giving us mind, speech, and knowledge. Mind, so that we may understand you. Speech, so that we may expound you. Knowledge, so that we may know you. We rejoice, having been illuminated by your knowledge." Now, those are the three key features of knowledge that's being pointed out by the Hermetist Gnostic, and that is something we share in common, being Christian Gnostics. The first being the importance of the mind. And we talked about the mind in the secret book of John, where Christ stood before the Mother Father requesting the gift of the mind, so that man could receive the message of the Christ. And so that is what we want to understand. So what does it mean? In Gnosticism, we equate the mind to being the soul, the radar system. It is the cup that receives the message from on high, the spirit, from the spiritual self or the spiritual realm. So this is something we want to be able to have wisdom about and gnosis about, because essentially the mind is kind of the ego, it's the personality, it's the persona. It is there to provide us, it's the psyche. It's there to remind us and give us a sense about why we came here. It is to give us an understanding about how do we get in touch with the spiritual self. And we can do this through many different ways. It can be through getting to know ourselves. To know thyself is the beginning of all knowledge, really. It's the pathway of leading to all the wonders of the universe. To know the mind, to know thyself. So we can do this through reading the Bible, the Gnostic texts, other texts, stories, books, watch movies, listen to songs, talk, have discourse between passerbyers in life. It is something that is constantly being gifted to us from the spiritual realm, from Mother Father, to remind us why we came here. Each one of us came here for a unique purpose, to bring forth an accomplishment, to bring forth our unique seed that's been given to us, that coin that Christ talks about, a gift that we've been given. And that's the knowledge Father wants us to understand, so that we may understand you. And notice it's capitalized. You is you yourself, the Father within, the Christ within, the hope of glory, so that we may understand the Father. Because to understand the Father, Mother, that great silence, is to go into that silent space and to allow room for knowledge to come in unfiltered and infinitely. That is to be in meditation and communion with the Father, is to allow for the greatest potential understanding of self. Now, speech is the second one, so that we may expound you. When we're thinking about speech, we're not just thinking about the words that we use. We're thinking about the way we have both verbal and nonverbal communication with the rest of the world and with ourselves, even the internal dialogue, so that we may expound you. We're talking about expounding the Mother Father. We're talking about Christ, the hope of glory within. It's not about going to church and thinking God's up in the heaven and we bow down and the Father and Mother wants to be worshipped. That's the opposite. Christ says he does not want to be worshipped. The Father Mother is not looking to be worshipped. But to expound you, or the Father Mother, is to really elevate the way that you present yourself in the world, whether it be through actual speech, through the mouth, verbally or nonverbal speech, or the way our behavior speaks, or the lack of what we say, or the lack of what we might not say, or the lack of how we behave. So all of these are mediums of speech we're talking about here. We're not just talking about the way we move our mouths, and that is called talking. Speech comes in all forms, both verbal, nonverbal, and behavioral. Now, the next and final knowledge is so that we may know you, and that is knowledge itself. That's the gnosis. And that knowledge is within you. That knowledge is outside you as well. It is the quiet, symbolic expression or story that's being told by every engagement that you have with the world around you and within yourself, with all people. There is a discourse, a dialogue that nature, the world, the universe, the stars, the planets, the mountains, the oceans, the animals, the plants, every person that you encounter, even the encounter you have with yourself in your daily living, brings forth a story, and that story unfolds for you potential for increasing wisdom and knowledge, is handed to you on a smorgasbord every day. There's continuous, infinite, non-interrupted stream of light and knowledge being presented to you. So there are myriads and millions of potential encounters that you have with this essence called gnosis and wisdom that's being provided for you. So this is the essence. What it means to be a Gnostic is to appreciate and have gratitude for these three features that we've been provided. Because without knowledge, we'd be grappling in the dark and we'd be simply like robots, mindless automatons. We would have no mind. So it is the mind that allows us to receive the gnosis, the Christ. And it is the mind that is presented to us. The gift is the Sophia. And then that body is the universe that's providing us the wisdom, our ability to connect to the universe and with each other is through speech. And again, speech being verbal, nonverbal, and behavioral, as well as experiential with self and the way the universe and you interrelate with each other. And that has much to do with the way you believe that it is connected to you and has meaning. All right, now that is what is being rejoiced about here. We rejoice, having been illuminated by your knowledge. We rejoice because you have shown us yourself. Notice how, even though we're talking about the Mother Father and how the Mother Father has revealed itself every day, a new revelation, it's also talking about self. How that is such a glorious moment of celebration. You are revealing yourself to the world and to yourself, and that is the highest form of fullness and perfect mind and glory that you can be in, that essence of self. We rejoice because while we were in the body, that's the flesh self, you have made us divine through your knowledge. Notice how this is talking about transcendency and ascendancy. That's the whole journey that we have been allowed to experience. It is not getting to the end of the road that is the only thing that matters. It is the experiencing of the journey brings out the richness of eventually ascertaining the glory of reaching the accomplishment and bringing forth the seed. And that is something to rejoice about, because it is the process of bringing together the dual and going from carnal and basic to spiritual self joining to become a divine soul, divinity. We talked about double unity, so bringing two together in unison, that body and the spirit coming together through the soul or the mind. The thanksgiving of the man who attains to you, capital U, is one thing, that we know you, we have known you, intellectual light. And again, that is the you, the light within, the hope of glory. Life of life, we have known you. Womb of every creature, we have known you. And it is the coming and descending into this realm that allows us to get into the mud, to grapple with the dark and the darkness and the ignorance, that then allows for free will and the ascendancy. And then that allows us to partake that Last Supper, the bread and the wine, which is of the body and the blood of the Christ, and then brings forth the gnosis, this releasing of that light through those three elements. It's done by the leading element of fire that burns air, water, and earth, that then releases the light. And that's what you want. You want to be desecrated and burnt down. You want to allow yourself to shine forth that light and be ready to be desecrated, just as Christ was taken to the cross. Because once you have done that, you essentially are saying you value the spiritual self above and beyond the earthly things, pluralic things. You value more than the kenomic things. You value the spirit over the body. So that's why you are encouraged to bring forth you, because that's ultimately what is eternal and what you've been brought here to present and shine forth. Christ talks about the light, the candle. Nobody hides a candle with a cloth, else the cloth will burn and burn down the whole tent. A candle is meant to be revealed so that its light may shine. Pregnant woman we're talking about is this realm, the Sophia. With the nature of the Father we have known you. Eternal permanence of the begetting Father. That's the difference between, again, the Father that begets versus the non-begetting Father, because that's the forefather. The original monad is the non-begetter. And then the begetter is the Father-Mother that then has the Christ, which is the first begotten Son. So forth and so on. We all become begetters, because Christ was the first to beget, to bring forth what he came here to beget. And that is, he came here to get self-begetter, you see. Thus have we worshipped your goodness. And when we're thinking about worshipped, we're not thinking about, oh, you're so great and we're less than you and groveling at, We're thinking about celebrating and reverencing the goodness of, and when we think about goodness, we're not thinking in morality terms, but we're thinking about in qualitative terms, eternal life. Everything that brings forth life is good. There is one petition that we ask. We would be preserved in knowledge. Again, going back to the prayer, mentioned the discourse of the 8th and 9th. The way to pray to the Mother Father is to ask for gnosis and guidance. Not to ask for material things, but to ask for things that are eternal and that transcend everything. Then you're going to be far more powerful to be able to manifest and to emanate. And there is one protection that we desire, that we not stumble in this kind of life. And so this is talking about that we not stumble, have a stumbling block like these laws and going into darkness. These are things that we want to make sure that we are protected from. When they have said these things in the prayer, they embraced each other, and they went to eat their holy food, which has no blood in it. I'm not sure if this is referring to being vegan, vegetarian, or they somehow drained all the blood from the animal, but you can also translate this to mean, remember that Christ had the bread and he had the wine, and the wine was the blood. And so you could think of that maybe being had no soul in it. However you want to interpret it, you can interpret it literally, or you can interpret it metaphorically, or both. And then finally, the writer provided a scribble note. It's written, "I have copied this one discourse of his. Indeed, very many have come to me." Presumably, talking about Hermes, we don't know for certain. "I have not copied them because I thought that they have come to you," plural. "Also, I hesitate to copy these for you because perhaps they have already come to you, and the matter may burden you, since the discourse of that one which have come to me are numerous." So he's basically saying, forgive me if I'm just writing down something you've already heard, again, perhaps several times. Now, that's really ultimately what we want to get from this text. That is, knowledge is at the cornerstone of what allows for ever-increasing ascendancy. And to ascend is to prolong longevity and to bring forth goodness, and is to do what you've been brought here to do, to have knowledge of self, to bring forth the accomplishment, the seed. It's not about sin. It's not about a set of laws. It's not about morality. It's not about any of those things that separate and divide and create division, suffering, and ultimately the wages of sin are death. That's why Christ talked about go and sin no more. Of course, he's not talking about the Orthodox Christian version of that, because it's already a contradiction, even in their understanding of that word, because everybody in the Orthodox Christian world knows that nobody can not sin. You may go to the Father every Sunday to be forgiven of your sins, because Orthodox Christians would tell you that you can never not sin. You're always going to sin. To the last day of your life, you're going to sin. So obviously Christ doesn't mean, when he says go and sin no more, it means in a moralistic way, in a moralistic sense or context. From a Gnostic lens, what Christ is talking about, he's saying, go and no longer have the mark of misunderstanding about why you're here and what your purpose is. When you talk about with that the harlot that everybody was going to stone, he's telling her, go and rethink about whether your purpose for being here is to be a prostitute. He's asking her not to do that anymore, not because he's looking at it as something bad or immoral, but rather he recognizes she's doing it because she doesn't think well of herself and she doesn't think she can do anything else for herself. She's doing it for survival purposes and means, not because she believes she has something meaningful or purposeful to present to herself and the world. She has a seed or accomplishment. So when Christ is talking about go and sin no more, that's what he's talking about from a Gnostic lens perspective. I'm saying this because, again, when we think about the purpose of salvation, the way in which we are saved, when Christ came here to show us the path to salvation, it wasn't through the forgiveness of sins through the Orthodox understanding of that word, but it's through knowledge, gnosis. It's through gathering wisdom in this realm and presenting our gift to the world. Now, there's a final thing I want to say before we close out this video. Oftentimes, when people first stumble in Gnosticism and they're rejoicing, it's like the book that is sweet to the taste, but then ultimately is bitter to the tummy, that we hear about in Revelation. And that is, people rejoice. They're no longer burdened down by the chain of law and sin and all these things. And they're also freed from the shackles of understanding the very horrible God of the Old Testament, or any other horrible God that you may run into. And they understand then the father, mother loves them just the way they are. And for once they feel really loved and they feel they really have a purpose. Well, then they go into kind of a bitterness because they then wake up to the nature of the world. Now, of course, they already had that understanding, but they usually have been taught things are bad because we're being punished by the brutal God. And mankind is really the cause of all the badness in the universe. The universe is corrupt and horrible because man caused it to be that way. It was God's wrath that he turned everything bitter against man because man didn't listen to him in the garden. And we're talking about just two people that you don't even know from thousands of years ago. And so that's where the bitterness comes in. The man begins, as Thomas talks about, when a Gnostic sees the world for what it is, he sees that it is but a corpse. then the next thing he recognizes that the corpse is not worthy of him, meaning that he no longer really wants to be here anymore. Ultimately, he doesn't want to come back at least. But then ultimately he does understand he has a mission here. And then what brings forth is a couple of things. Number one, it brings forth some degree of confusion about, well, what is my mission exactly? And it's not a specific profession. It's not a specific something you're supposed to do. But it is a presentation about how do you bring forth the speech that we talked about here. That is the message. The mission, message, they come from a similar stem word. And so that's really what you're doing. An accomplishment, the positive sense of that word, is you're coming in joint venture with the Spirit of the Mother Father to bring forth the essence of that message that you are to bring forth. This simply is narrowed down into one phrase we talked about in this text, and why I'm bringing it up now, and why it's relevant. Or why don't I not know my mission? Or maybe my mission is my profession. I'm supposed to come to be an attorney, or I'm supposed to become a computer science. And I often make those examples, and I mean those more in a way of giving listeners something they can focus in on. But ultimately, that isn't really the mission. That's more a medium by which you can bring forth the mission. But they need not be necessarily a career. It can be something entirely other than a career. It can be even like we talked about, maybe some come here simply to be parents. Some come to be a baby that only lives for a brief week. So there's so many reasons then comes from that, not only confusion, but people begin to understand that to mean have to have a very clear understanding of what my mission is. Because if I don't, then how am I supposed to attain it? How am I supposed to accomplish it? No, it's not like that. It is simply listening to self, listening and being yourself in the world, presenting your true voice to the world. And again, that voice speech can be verbal, nonverbal, and behavioral. And the way that you interact with the world at large, and the way you understand the world, and the way you articulate that through those three ways. And that is the seed that you're bringing forth, the gift. You're making something of that. You're giving something back to the world, then fulfilling your mission. Now, the other emotion that people often, because they understand that to mean I've got to accomplish something, then comes anxiety. Because they're thinking, well, I've got to accomplish it, because if I don't accomplish it, it really can spiral them down into a kind of depression. So that's another thing I want to clarify. This is what this text is trying to explain. You rejoice about the knowledge you've been given that you're sharing with the world. The most difficult thing is understanding the knowledge and the harmonizing of the knowledge of good and evil, and how you harmonize them, and you not stray either too far right or too far left, but you are presenting your true self to the world. And you're giving whatever your talent is to the world, whatever you can do to give to this world. And that can be in so many ways. Like I said, it could be a parent, it could be a child, perhaps a baby. And that's where people say, well, how about a young child that comes and only lives for a day? What was their accomplishment? What was their mission? Well, in that instance, their mission is whatever that example presented to the world, so forth and so on. So the essence of truth will set you free. Remember that Christ talked about the truth shall set you free. So to be authentic, we talked about the book about authenticity, the authoritative, being an author. That is the essence of what's going to release you from this realm. Being true, being an author of self. Not an author for someone else, or have someone else be your author, but you are your author. And when you become the essence of the authentic, the authoritative voice of self, present that to the world like you're shining a candle, a light to the world. You don't hide it, but you present it to the world. Then you are doing your message. You are on the path of the narrow and straight, the way. You have found the way. Now, of course, you're not going to be able to do that all the time because you have a flesh body. But really, ultimately, it's really about the consistency of that. I can't tell you how to measure that. There's not really a metric. All I can say is in the afterlife, you're presented an opportunity to either come back or not. And you're going to know in that moment. And then in that moment, if you decide not to come back, then you go on to the higher realms. And if you decide to come back, then you come back because you feel like you haven't completed. You don't have a sense of fullness. You haven't found the pleroma within. Perhaps you feel like you're 75% there. You still need to do 25%. And that's the way Gnostics understand the way we are saved from this realm. And that's going to be up to you. And that's why Christ presented the disciples an opportunity to come with him. He didn't badger them and say, well, you're going to go to hell in a handbasket if you don't come with me now. He basically just opened it up with peace and offering it to you. You're welcome to come with me now. But none of them decided to come with him. But he didn't judge them. He didn't castigate them or said, you're bad for not following me after everything I've taught you. No, he just went on. And that was it. And he gave them other opportunities. He didn't say there was never going to be another opportunity for them. So that really is the essence of what I am taking from the prayer of thanksgiving. And that ultimately is why the most fragrant thing the Father and Mother appreciates about the mortal man or the mortal human is when they're in a state of gratitude. And why is that? Why is a state of gratitude? Because the state of gratitude is really quality of having faith, having trust in the Mother Father. And why is that so important? Because when you trust or have faith in the Mother Father, you are really essentially saying what it is you really believe. You really believe that there is a God. You really believe there's a Mother Father. And that's why you have gratitude toward it and goodwill toward it. And ultimately, that means you have faith that it actually exists. And that says something about what you actually believe. Then you have had the highest form of gnosis, because you then no longer miss the mark of understanding of where you really come from. That's why gratitude is the most fragrant thing the Mother Father is going to experience from you. So that's it with this particular book. Although very short, you can see again, it has a message. Again, I want to remind you, it is indeed a Gnostic text, but it's not a Christian Gnostic text. But again, you got to remember Hermeticism, as well as Christ, Seth, Noah, all of these people, they come from the root called Gnosticism. It isn't as though Christian Gnostics came out of Greek Gnostics, but rather it is that the Greek Gnostic and the Christian Gnostic comes from Gnosticism. So that's what you want to understand. And that's why this particular text resonates with Gnosticism and why it's found in the Nag Hammadi. So with that, we'll stop here and we'll finish up the Codex VI with the final book that was mentioned in this video, Asclepius. We're going to only read the section 21 through 29. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, have a blessed day.